Greetings comrades, this is a video responding to part 2 of Alien1Tau9's message. He's talking here about imperialism amidst rhetoric of humanitarianism. Now I think with regards to imperialism, convincing people that the war is shitty is not necessarily the difficult part. From where I'm sitting, the difficult part is actually getting them to do something about it. Something, what can we do about it? Basically, we can overthrow the government. That's it. That's in my view, you can perhaps disrupt the war effort, but that will lead to kind of an internal social conflict which you don't necessarily need right now. I mean, look, the best example, what was the greatest and most successful anti-war movement possibly in the history of the world? It was the Bolshevik Party. How did they stop the war? They overthrew the government. Okay, that led to another war and to them being invaded by 7 countries, but so perhaps that was perhaps the most successful. They were successful in stopping the war that they wanted to stop, but not necessarily successful in stopping war itself. So but yeah, I mean, for me, my mother was kind of an enthusiastic peace activist, CND, various other peace groups, kind of protesting wars and stuff like that. I didn't get dragged to I don't actually like going to anti-war protests that much, because I don't like, as a radical leftist, I don't actually like hippies that much. I find them to be very hypocritical, so I'm going to stay away from the anti-war thing. Of course, I support anti-war movements, but I critique them, basically. I have my own... I'm not a pacifist. I support revolutionary war and wars of defense against imperialism. So, yeah, anyway, we're talking here about basically how empires disguise the kind of nefarious actions that they may take with kind of talk of, I guess, democracy and freedom and progress and stability and stuff like that. And I think you can still look at Iraq and Afghanistan today and see that they've really neither brought democracy, peace, stability, progress, or anything to those countries. Let's take a quick look at Iraq. Okay, Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was basically a Nazi. He was an Arab nationalist, an Arab supremacist. He gassed the Kurds. He gassed the Iranians. That was probably a pragmatic move, as they were spilling over his border towards Basra, but he gassed them nonetheless. And the Kurds were just... yeah, he was a genocidal Arab nationalist with a pseudo-fascist regime. I've got no love for him whatsoever. But with regards to his kind of chosen people, he put the Shia down. He oppressed the Shia very heavily, even more so after the Iran-Iraq war, for obvious reasons. What he did was, okay, there wasn't much peace, but it was a stable regime. Now, I'm not saying that as if it was a good thing, but, he kept a lid on a lot of brewing social conflicts. And what happened when the Americans, and unfortunately the British and the Polish was the other group, swept in, wiped out the infrastructure for a great deal, bombed the shit out of everything, the place was thrown into anarchy. And the working class organised and resisted, but they organised around religious lines, often extremist religious lines. You had Shia militia massacring Sunnis, Sunni militias massacring Shias, everyone massacring the Christians, and I doubt there are any Jews in there anyway, so in that respect they got off lightly. But it threw the country into civil war. There were car bombs going off everywhere. The Americans were, you know, they expected, to be honest, I believe that they expected, you know, World War II. They'd sweep in through the streets of Baghdad, and you know, they'd be giving them flowers, and they'd be, you know, throwing candy at them or something, you know, getting them to marry their daughters, saying, "Oh, thank you, America, for saving us for Saddam." Whereas I think in reality, what they thought was Israel is attacking us, basically, or the Zionists are attacking us. This is a Zionist plot. These are the enemy. You are the people who fucked us and put us in this position. Because they tricked them in 1991. They said, uprise against Saddam Hussein and we'll support you. After they'd got Saddam out of Kuwait but not out of power. That was the slogan. And so, yeah, they had an uprising. And according to a good friend of mine who was in the Central Committee of the Worker Communist Party of Kurdistan, was there at the time, he said Kurdistan came pretty damn close to having a socialist revolution. A Marxist-Leninist socialist revolution. But, no, well, they weren't pro-American at the time, but the Americans, I believe, forged links with Sunnis and kind of nationalist Kurdish groups, whereas the communists were obviously trying to forge an independent road, I guess you could say. But anyway, none of that promised support came. They learnt that the hard way, and Saddam fucking killed them all, basically. So no, they didn't have any love from America. And we all know the results. It was a fucking shocking war. It was a fucking horrible war. Not only for the Iraqis, but for everyone else who was there, all the foreign troops. They didn't have a good time. You know, I wonder what the figures are in suicides for Iraq war veterans. And, you know, in Britain, we had massive protests against it, and basically the result was, well, they did it anyway. They went to war anyway, and they ignored everyone. And basically, instead of the elementary reaction of, you know, okay, we have to seriously think about the power structures in this country, because when millions of people march against a completely ridiculous war and they just completely ignore us, you know, what kind of democracy do we have? Instead, people are just like, fuck it, we tried, you know, whatever. Let's just go about our business and kind of, you know, how terrible it all is. But, you know, nothing we can do. And then, of course, you have the occasional bombardment of red poppies and, you know, the sort of fucking... Because there was the war on terror as well. Don't forget, we're all being pumped full of Muslims are bad, Muslims are gonna fucking kill you. And then, on occasion, some Muslims who actually did come and try and fucking kill us, set off bombs in London and Madrid and stuff like that, which didn't help matters none. Hardly created a sympathetic atmosphere for their cause anyway. So, because yeah, there was a, you know, in the whole Islamic terrorist thing, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, I'm not a 9/11 truther, but the atmosphere created by the whole 9/11 and the kind of paranoia event around that event created this kind of paranoia about Islam and Muslim terrorists, and you know, you know, kind of support for the war. And these people thought, actually, yeah, these people are in a war against Muslims, so let's fight back. And thus we have bombs going off in the tubes, which I travel through to go to work every day. You know, it was fucked up, and you know, that's the shit. But you know, people, the Iraq War is not viewed as an achievement. It's not political capital, at least here. I don't know, I doubt it is in America, but you know, one of the things the Tories say about Labour is, you did the Iraq War. That shit was you. Of course, they're happy to champion, you know, Afghanistan was the good war, basically. And you know, for a while back in my days when I used to be a liberal, there was a time when I used to hold very liberal views. Yeah, I didn't support the Iraq War, but I supported the Afghanistan War. I mean, like, why wouldn't you? You know, the Taliban are evil people, that is for sure. And yeah, So on the surface, because it was very quiet for a long time, because it was, all the focus was on, you know, the, god, all those horrible battles like Fallujah and, you know, Basra and all these and all the nightmarish atrocities that were coming out about what was going on there, you know, from all sides. No, there was no good people in that war, apart from one tiny Marxist militia which apparently shot some US Special Forces once, but they weren't heard from again. But you know, there was no goodness in that war. But you know, in Afghanistan, it seemed pretty much cut and dry. You know, you had the good guys who were bringing democracy against kind of the barbaric Taliban. Of course, when we look more deeply on this, we see that, and it's still a hard war to look at. And this is the kind of message I want to get across about this: is that, okay, half the dudes who were on the side of the Afghan army were fighting the Taliban a few years ago, and we paid them. A lot of the people who were training the Taliban, in addition to people who were training on our side, were paid by, you know, I'm not talking about all of them, but, you know, because some of the key training people and some of the weapons they use were funded by the CIA in order to fight the Soviet Union, and I do think that it would have been much better off if the Soviets had won that war. It would have been better if the USA hadn't funded these, most of them actually turned into the Northern Alliance, so, but funded these people to overthrow a secular socialist government, and replace it with 10 years of anarchism, 10 years of anarchy, but not in the anarchist sense, you know, just madness, warlords, etc., etc. Then, what was it, like 15 years of the, 10 years of the Taliban or something like that. You know, and I think things that, you know, it's all kind of the WikiLeaks stuff. I would say that a lot of people, especially the people who are likely to be active in this movement, already view imperialism. They don't understand the concept of imperialism as a whole, but they view the war as bad. Okay, and that's a good place to start. And to be honest, even the right-wing libertarians all view the war as bad. They just have they dance around imperialism. They think, basically, they say blame the New World Order, the Illuminati, the fucking Rothschild guys, blame them. And to be honest, that's just a substitute for blame the Jews, let's face it here. They say blame them because it's all their fault. What they dance around is that the cause of this war is rooted in capitalism. Everyone knows that this is a war about oil, this is a war about logistics or control and stuff. And it's about greed. And what we have to dispel is the idea that you can have capitalism without extreme greed, without imperialism, basically, in countries like America, like, you know, like Britain, and in the future like China and Russia, because they'll be playing the same game America is now when the time comes, and that's the truth. So this has kind of been an incoherent rant, really, but, you know, this is just me reading your letter and giving my initial thoughts, and I really want to sit down and write something as well as you did. And what I think I'm going to do, if that's okay with you, and I'm going to do it anyway, and you can tell me if you're not cool with it, but I'm going to post what you wrote in the description boxes of these videos, so people can read what you had to say. But yeah, it just sent me off on a tangent. So anyway, I hope you enjoy my ranting. Like I said, I haven't given it the response it deserves, because it was wonderfully written, and very interesting. So yeah, anyway, thanks for sending it in. You should make some videos yourself. That's the other thing I wanted to say to you, because obviously you're extremely clever, so yeah, you know, get yourself a webcam, man, or some kind of video making program, and produce some videos, because you've got a good brain on you, and I think people should hear what you have to say on these subjects. So anyway, thank you for your message. Thanks to anyone who was there to sit and listen to me rant about Iraq and shit like that. Red salutes, comrades.